It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays. And this is going to be a combo regular Wellness Wednesday gameplay Wednesday. I haven't got a cute name for that yet, but that's okay. But a client asked for a starter video on how I set up a Rimworld colony right off the bat. So I recorded that. We're going to do double duty. Because I'm cool that way, and maybe people are double interested. But I wanted to share something for Two Women Talking fans. My version of Song's book, Calidus Chronicles, showed up. It's really pretty. See a song W.A. it's in. Yay. But it's pretty. It's inside. Book. Woo, pretty. Back cover. We agonized over this back cover, and I think it looks very good. She did a great job on this. And so I'm umming a lot. I'm excited. It's real. So yes, I still buy Treeware books. One, because I want her to sign it someday. But, also I am more likely to read a paper book because I can take it with me anywhere. So that's one announcement. Yay. I'll put the link in the description box if you want to check it out via Amazon. Buying it in the first little bit apparently helps with the Amazon algorithm and sales. There's going to be a lot of information thrown at you this video. So I'll do the help support this channel first. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy, either a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use but can't afford it, or you can sign up to be a monthly sponsor on Ko-fi.com/LeannaK, even either once a month, twice a month. I don't have anything more than twice a month yet. No one's asked for it, but there we are. Those are the various ways you can support things on this channel. And now, Rimworld. Is this going? Is this moving? Or is it paused? I'm using a new feature. Hang on. Play, go. There we go. Okay. Here we go. You're going to see how I build. This is a temperate environment with large mountains, I believe. And you see I got lucky with the fertile land in the vicinity and a body of water. So watch me build while I talk about the thing I wanted to talk about. Based on the last few comments, you see I'm using the mountains so I don't have to use as many resources. That is better for defense. We're doing a workshop at the end of April 29th, 1 p.m. on not beating yourself up, or at least beating yourself up less, because one, we were planning on doing mental health workshops because videos and comment sections are not ideal for this stuff. They're a good way for people to get a sense, but it's not the same as a place where people can ask questions and do dialogue. And by we, I mean me and the It's Not Therapy facilitators. If you want to listen to the It's Not Therapy podcast for the last few weeks to get a sense of who they are, they're great. We did a thing on this topic, so we've got a lot of primers for this workshop, which is going to be a 45-minute information presentation followed by a I just realized there's no desktop audio. Oh, there is audio. Okay, maybe I'll turn that down a bit. There we go. But yeah, the topic, how not to beat yourself up, was the absolute most popular one with the patrons. Yes, this all goes to Patreons, which is one thing that's good, that if people are willing to put money down, obviously their opinion matters. It's going to be online, and you don't have to be on camera. You do not have to use your real voice. You don't even have to use your real name as a screen name, as long as we can connect your screen name to the ticket you purchased. Yes, there will be tickets purchased. They're only $10, and the first 50 are 2 for 1, so you can bring a friend. Or you can buy 2 for 1 and donate the ticket. Or you can just buy a ticket and donate it. Now, why are we charging? Well, one, people deserve to get compensated. But I would probably do this stuff for free. Except, my experience with free workshops is you get people who are just there to be there. There's almost a lifestyle of going to these things. And so people sit and they're not really investing in themselves. And especially when we're talking about self-concept and self-esteem, a little bit of investment, feeling like you are either you are paying your way, or someone has, gone out of their way to get you something. It's a different mindset than, oh, it's a free government workshop. Let's just show up and see what it's about. The mindset of everybody being there to get stuff done, I think is really, really important when it comes to mental health and wellness and, getting the better that you deserve. And there have been some YouTube comments of late and some comments on Twitter that have really alarmed me. Not because anybody did anything wrong, quite the opposite. I am seeing comments that have signs that people have been on the receiving end of some pretty profound long-term abuse. And this workshop is going to be sensitive to that in a way that we can't be on a YouTube community where there has to be maintaining order and comment sections have to be somewhat moderated because obviously, all the context is not there. So this is going to be, it will be a more complete thing. They're able to ask follow-up questions if somebody makes a comment. It's less directing traffic because it's a smaller group, more on that in a bit, and more about really identifying the specific things that individuals and groups of people want. If you're wondering what I'm doing here in Rimworld, I'm just using an existing structure again to minimize early resources. I like doing it partially because it's fun, but it's also, resources. And speaking of resources, mental health is a resource. You only have so much tolerance. You only have so much resilience, so on and so forth. And I get that people's time, especially on a Saturday, is valuable. We're trying Saturday. If there's a time, if another day or time works better for you, let me know. It'll keep it in mind going forward. We did the weekend during the day so that people in as many time zones as possible can participate. 1 p.m. or Eastern Daylight is like 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, and it's like 5-6 o'clock in Europe. So, a maximum number of people can attend at this time. This is the time we find within the community everybody can make it, or there's at least a chance of making it. There's farming. I love farming in Rimworld. The music's so chill, isn't it? But what we're going to do, it's going to be 45 minutes of presentation, like I said. And then depending on how many people are there, we're going to have the opportunity to break into small groups for some discussion and some ability to be heard by a human and get some direct attention. And that'll be at least 45 minutes, but if people want to go longer, they can go longer. But the 45-minute presentation is going to be why we beat ourselves up. There are reasons, there is science, and I like science. I find that knowing why my brain is doing what it is, that there are actually reasons these processes happen, that there's not something broken about your brain. It's environmental. And I find, if you have the awareness of why your brain is doing what it's doing, it's easier to get your brain to do what you want it to do. Hopefully that makes sense. Then we're going to go over the most common techniques very briefly that people are taught to stop beating themselves up. Now, the best of these techniques only work about 65% of the time, and we're going to get into why. And part of that why does have to do with neurodivergencies and the tendency for a lot of psychology to use metaphors that fall incredibly flat with the neurodivergent. More on that, the presentation, but I've found that that's a big reason why the traditional stuff may not work. The other big one is trauma, right? If someone's undergone a trauma, your standard thought-stopping exercises ain't gonna work. And let's face it, that's a huge percentage of people, right? People who have some sort of trauma condition, and then neurodivergent people. Of course, the success rates for various mental health techniques, everybody cheers and does a victory dance when they crack 60%. Even 50% is considered a good result. No, really, it is. And so we'll get into the specifics of why certain techniques don't work, and why we're doing all this, why we're laying the fundamentals, is that everybody has to tailor the approach to themselves. So if people can get a sense of why things work the way they are, they might be able to figure out how to make it work for them with some guidance for us, right? But how much are we going to be able to do in 90 minutes, right? Just give you a starting point and then the possibility for follow-up later. Then we're going to get into the various things that have worked for us. And that's why having a group of people who have had different processes, and they're all variations on similar themes, but the details can matter so much in terms of whether something is going to be effective for someone. And when it comes to retraining your thought processes, what can work really well for one person can be completely counterproductive for another. And that's why we're going to offer a bunch of different options for people, so that if one thing doesn't work, if one thing makes you feel worse instead of better, you can try something new. Now, why are we doing this? Well, other than the obvious, because it's useful. The mental health system is incredibly overburdened right now. Even people who can get in to see therapists, it's expensive. It is way too expensive to give you the basics of why these things work, and here's some things to try, right? If none of these things work, okay, then seek out a professional. Or if you are in therapy, maybe this will jog something that you can take to your therapist, and it's a starting point. Anything that moves the process along is good. And the point is, it's only $10, which most people can afford. I say most because my friends who are on ODSP, $10 can be the difference between a meal or not this month. So not everybody, but most people can afford it. And even with the low cost one-on-one and bubble sessions that we're providing right now, even that might be too much, or somebody doesn't know, or having a one-on-one conversation may be too intimidating at first. The whole point of this is, if you don't know what to say, if you don't, if you're not ready to talk, at least you can come and listen, right? And it can be totally pseudonym. Again, we need to know who you are, just because we don't want trolls crashing, but your identity will be protected for the presentation and the discussion. And so you can talk via chat if you decide you want to make a comment, or you can just sit there and listen. That's all. Maybe you'll pick something up and be able to mull it over. And the nice thing about it being on Zoom online is there's no need for eye contact. There's no need for any of that thing that could make it really, really uncomfortable for people who are neurodivergent. So we've definitely done this with, people on the spectrum, people with ADHD, people with, other neurodivergencies, because that, to me, is the group that is overall least well served by the mental health profession as a whole. There are some great professionals that work with autistic people. Often the focus is on the fact that they're autistic. And I know a lot of people who, they work with me, and the therapists they see are humming and hawing over whether they're on the spectrum. And my thought is, okay, if there's any possibility that someone is on the spectrum, there's no blood test for autism, right? It's a series of symptoms. It's a series of questions. Blight, I hate blight. Curse you, Rimworld blight. But if my attitude is, if there's any suspicion that somebody might be, well, try the techniques associated with the condition and see if they work. It's not a medication specifically for autism. People get prescribed medication to deal with the anxiety and the depression that tend to be comorbid. But people with autistic people, I try to watch that. People prefer different things. But autistic people can have a lot of social anxiety and beat themselves up after the fact because certain, I don't know what to call it, but conditioning they receive in their formative years makes them believe that they are responsible for every social interaction they have, and if it goes wrong, it's their fault. People with ADHD, but also other neurodivergencies, can be more sensitive to rejection because it's harder to process it. Things like this. And so there's a lot of beating self up that goes on, and it's not necessary. There are other ways to look at a situation and not slack, still be accountable. This isn't, oh no, you're special snowflakes who are never wrong and are perfect just the way that's not the kind of thing we do. We do things more. Yeah, everybody makes mistakes. It's what you do next that matters. And obviously, I've got my top 10 phrases on It's Not Therapy. Those apply. They're foundational principles for the stuff I do for a reason. And so there will be discussion about techniques. And one of the things I do with this work off the internet is everything is just a suggestion. No one is going to pressure you to try something, to, you may have gone through things where people tell you ad nauseum, just use the tools, just use the tools. You're not using the tools. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be really conversational, very evidence driven, very plain English, but when a technical term is useful, so people might have a better chance of understanding what they're being told by a clinician, we're going to do that just because this is a geek and gamer audience. Technical terms don't frighten us, right? Though in some cases a technical term is really unhelpful because it's inaccurate and it's just the term that the industry uses because, well, it's 50 years old. And we'll get into some of that as well. And one of the things I've discovered in doing the work I do in the mental health space is a lot of things are the way they are just because of inertia, and it takes too much energy and money to wholesale change it. And so there's a lot of workarounds, a lot of things being presented under a certain name that it may or may not actually be. Other things are massive tents, like cognitive behavioral therapy. There are so many techniques under the umbrella of cognitive behavioral therapy. But we'll get into all that at the workshop. You notice I'm being unsuccessfully attacked in Rimworld. We take an approach like a building simulator. You start with sort of the essentials, the building blocks, and we make something out of it. I like the researching animation on this game. I love this game. I just love this game. I love sharing Rimworld. So somebody asked, like, yay, Rimworld. But yeah, I really encourage people to do it as a starting point if you can make it. The video won't be online after the fact because people's privacy. But if a lot of people can't make that date for whatever reason, we may run it again. We'll see. This is all sort of new. I've done workshops online, obviously. I've done a lot of online instruction, but this particular format with like a ticketed event in this particular thing, no, most of what I've done is kind of at the post-secondary level. So it's an experiment, and like we've been doing for the last 3/4 of a year, we take it, we tweak it, we try it, but I guarantee you that you will get something useful out of your time on April 29th. Especially if you participate and ask questions, there will be some optional questions that we do occasionally, like, asking, not telling people to volunteer information if they so choose. But again, it's all completely optional. One of the foundational principles of this stuff is that we're trying to make that first step or first step back for people as small and as easy as possible. And sometimes people are just not ready to look someone in the face and, talk about not feeling great. That is exhausting. I spent a period of time where I was getting bounced around from professional to professional, and the first 3 sessions or all case history. And if you're in an area that does, government funded 6 to 8 weeks of cognitive behavioral therapy, and the first 3 weeks are just case history, unpacking the bad stuff, well, that's more than a third of the sessions just misery. We like to give you something that you can use right away, so that you walk away feeling good instead of depleted right away, instead of having to wait, and you'll hear the air quotes in my voice, let the process work. I don't believe, as somebody who has done a lot of looking at this system, it's not fair to someone to put them in a month of free fall before they start to feel better. It can really make people give up. So that's my pitch. I'll be talking about it in the coming weeks, just briefly, but I wanted to talk about it on this format so that people had a sense of what it was when I talk about it later. I will be promoting it a lot just because I want to make sure everybody's aware of it, because it seems that no matter how many times I talk about something, there's someone going, oh, I missed it. Because some people, they don't watch any of my content for 3 weeks and then they binge, or a month, and so they miss it. So that's why there's so much lead time. That's why I'm going to be referencing it so often. I'm sure people don't mind because, this is not just selling t-shirts. This is actually giving people useful information. And part of the thing that inspired it is I find some of the most interesting and useful presentations that I attend are the academic talks, where they actually present data. Nobody's selling a methodology. Nobody's evangelizing a technique. They're just, we did research and here's what we found. And the results make me start thinking, all right, this is unexpected. So there are some assumptions that are being made in the process that are not accurate. Let's tweak. And I've had pretty good results with that. The other thing that's cool about not, I am not a therapist, is that I can take from, a psychodynamic technique or a CBT technique, or, acceptance commitment therapy or dialectic behavioral therapy. Those are subsections of cognitive behavioral therapy. I can take things as somebody who's, tried to use them and go, here's where the roadblocks were for me. Here are things that have worked really well for other people but didn't work for me. Or here are things that other people had terrible luck with but I found really useful. And the one thing I don't do is the psychoanalytic approach, because, well, obviously in a group setting, we're not going to ask for personal family information unless someone volunteers it. But also, I think that things like early childhood experiences, adverse childhood events, things like that, they are details. They're not the mechanics. They're an aesthetic, not, they're signifiers, not systems, right? At the end of the day, you want to be less rough on yourself, because being rough on yourself isn't working for you. The details of that are important, but personally, I find it works better when you get some techniques, you get some inventory items that you can use while you're exploring those details, instead of doing some big trauma dump before you're given any practical advice for where to put all of it, right? So again, April 29th, 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. It's 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Europe's like 5 hours ahead, 4 or 5 hours ahead, depending on time zone. So it's available for most people. Not sure about Australia. It might be very late at night, which is why we did it on a weekend. But yeah, it seems to be the easiest, the most, not perfect, but most. So thanks for coming to my TED Talk with Rimworld. And I hope you found this little setup for people who are interested in it in early gameplay. Decent. This actually ended up being a pretty good run. I ended up having a bunch of babies and all that stuff. So it was a pretty solid build for the beginning, even though the colony changed a lot. Is there any interest in doing time-lapse Rimworld things, like showing a little bit and then jumping and jumping and jumping? I don't know. I love Rimworld. Any excuse to play Rimworld. It's kind of just a nice background for these videos too, right? Anyway, help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone you can use if it can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK, or become a monthly sponsor of someone and help them get ongoing support via Ko-fi, kofi.com/LeannaK. I still like coffee better. It's apparently Ko-fi, but coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching. Be well, and hopefully see you on April 29th. Link with the details is in the description box below, or you can go to nottherapyshow.com. Our mailing list is there as well, so please join the mailing list. Thanks very much.